Have you ever wondered how someone can vanish without a trace in a world dominated by surveillance, digital footprints, and relentless security measures? Imagine a man walking calmly through the pristine lobby of a Tokyo bank, dressed in a dark suit. His presence seemingly ordinary, yet behind him lies an act so audacious it shakes the foundations of the criminal underworld. This man's face is blurred, not due to poor camera quality, but because every system designed to identify him returns nothing. No name, no history, no record exists anywhere. His identity is a void, a ghost in the machinery of modern technology. What you're about to discover might surprise you. This silent figure, known only as the Ledger Ghost, was the mastermind behind one of the most astonishing financial crimes in recent history. For over 10 years, he was the shadowy accountant managing the fortunes of one of Japan's most dangerous Yakuza clans, a role demanding absolute discretion, intelligence, and loyalty. Yet, on one seemingly ordinary Friday, he did the impossible. In just 16 minutes, he orchestrated the theft of $1 billion from the very criminal empire he once served. And within 72 hours, he erased every trace of his existence, leaving behind nothing but questions and chaos. The scene is set in a world where trust is scarce and power is measured in both money and fear. The Yakuza, with their ruthless reputation and deep-rooted networks, are not just a criminal organization. They are a force that commands respect and instills terror. To steal from them is not just a crime. It is a declaration of war. Yet, this man succeeded where many would have failed. How did he do it so quickly? How did he bypass layers of security that even state agencies struggle to penetrate? More intriguingly, how did he disappear so completely that even Interpol and Japan's most advanced investigative units are left chasing shadows? Tokyo's organized crime division stares at frozen frames from surveillance footage, their minds racing to decode the enigma before them. The man's steps, his calm demeanor, the absence of fear, all contradict the nature of the crime. In a city wired with cameras, sensors, and digital records, vanishing without a trace is nearly impossible. But this was no ordinary thief. This was a ghost who manipulated the digital world and the underworld alike, outsmarting not just criminals but governments and intelligence agencies. As we unravel the layers of this extraordinary story, you'll come to understand the delicate balance between power, secrecy, and technology. The Ledger Ghost's actions challenge everything we believe about security and identity in the modern age. Stay with me until the end, because this story is far from over, and the deeper we go, the more astonishing truths will emerge. What we're about to explore will take us beyond the surface of $1 billion heist into the mind of a man who vanished so thoroughly, he might never have existed at all. It's in moments like this, when the line between reality and illusion blurs so completely, that the story becomes not just something we watch unfold, but something we live alongside. The Ledger Ghost isn't just a thief. He's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears about trust, identity, and the fragile digital threads that connect us all. And as we unravel his trail, it's impossible not to wonder, how much of what we believe about security is just a comforting myth? How vulnerable are we really? If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt that uneasy twinge of doubt about the digital world we depend on, then I'd love to know what strikes a chord in your experience. Maybe you've encountered something similarly unsettling, or perhaps this story opens your eyes to risks you hadn't considered before. Whatever it is, sharing your thoughts here creates something powerful. A community where we learn not only from the story, but from each other's perspectives. And if you find yourself drawn into this unfolding mystery, hit that like button. It's more than just a click. It's a way to signal that this kind of deep dive matters to you, that these stories deserve to be heard and explored. Plus, when you like the video, it helps us reach more people who might be grappling with the same questions, the same fears, or the same curiosity. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden layers together, consider subscribing. This channel isn't just about delivering content. It's about building a space where we can explore these complex, sometimes unsettling truths as a team. Your presence, your voice, and your engagement fuel the journey forward, helping us dig deeper, ask harder questions, and bring more stories like this to light. So, if this subject feels meaningful to you, go ahead and drop a comment sharing what moved you most so far. Let's keep this conversation alive, because the story behind the Ledger Ghost is far from finished, and it's your insights that make this exploration richer. Whispers about the Ledger Ghost wove through the neon-lit backstreets and smoke-filled rooms of Tokyo's underworld like a spectral thread binding chaos to control. To the clans entrenched in a violent ballet of power and betrayal, he was more than a myth. He was the unseen architect of their survival. No one knew where he came from, or how he acquired the uncanny ability to navigate the labyrinth of offshore accounts and cryptographic shadows with such precision. But every ledger he touched was scrubbed clean. Every trail he erased left no trace. It was said that he worked not just with numbers, but with an almost supernatural detachment, his emotionless eyes reflecting nothing of the human cost behind the transactions. In a city where loyalty was currency and trust a rare commodity, the Ledger Ghost operated on a plane both revered and feared. He wasn't a man to be approached lightly or without cause. Clan members spoke of him in hushed tones, as if uttering his name aloud might summon a reckoning they were unprepared to face. His presence was never felt, only inferred by the sudden disappearance of a problem or the silent resolution of a financial deadlock that could have meant war. The ghostly figure clad in dark suits, always blending seamlessly with the shadows, was not just a fixer, but a symbol of impenetrable control amidst the unpredictable chaos of organized crime. The police, meanwhile, were left chasing shadows. Years of surveillance, informants, and cyber investigations yielded nothing but dead ends. The Ledger Ghost was a phantom in their files, an enigma wrapped in a void where evidence should have been. Some officers became obsessed, convinced that cracking his identity would unravel the entire network of clandestine operations that had been frustrating law enforcement for over a decade. Yet, every lead dissolved into nothingness, as if the ghost was always one step ahead, erasing his footprints before anyone could follow. It was a game of cat and mouse played in the digital ether, with the city's fate hanging in the balance. Beyond the immediate circles of crime and law enforcement, the criminal underworld regarded the Ledger Ghost with a complex mix of respect and dread. He was a necessary evil, a shadow broker who ensured that the machinery of illicit commerce kept turning without grinding to a halt in chaos. To cross him meant risking more than just exposure. It meant inviting a silent, inevitable downfall. Rumors spread that he was capable of wiping out entire financial empires with a flicker of his pen, that his ledgers were not just documents but weapons in a war fought in silence. His work was a dark alchemy where money was purified through layers of deceit and coded pathways, emerging clean enough to fuel the empire's ambitions without question or suspicion. What made the Ledger Ghost truly enigmatic was not just his mastery of numbers, but his almost ghost-like detachment from the life he helped sustain. Unlike the brash enforcers or outspoken leaders, he was a man who never sought glory or recognition. His silence was his shield, his invisibility his power. Stories circulated about the rare moments when he did speak, always with measured precision, never more than necessary, as if words themselves carried a weight he refused to bear lightly. Those who encountered him described an unsettling calm, a presence that seemed to absorb tension rather than radiate it. In a world driven by volatility and emotion, the Ledger Ghost was the cold center, the eye of a storm whose boundaries no one dared cross. Behind the veil of mystery, however, there were hints of a deeper story. Some whispered that the Ledger Ghost was not just a man but a symbol, a construct born from the collective need for order amid disorder. A myth cultivated by those who understood that fear and respect were the currencies of survival. Others believed he was a ghost in the truest sense, a figure who had slipped through the cracks of the system, erased from records and memories alike, living off the grid but commanding influence that spanned continents. This duality made him both untouchable and deeply human, a paradox wrapped in a suit and silence. The ledger he maintained was more than a book. It was a map of power, a ledger of lives intertwined in a web of allegiance and betrayal. Every transaction recorded was a story untold, every balance sheet a ledger of secrets. For those who dared to look closer, the numbers whispered of hidden alliances and impending threats, of fortunes won and lost in the shadows. The Ledger Ghost's role was not merely to keep the books balanced, but to ensure that the scales of power remained tilted in favor of those who could afford his silence and his expertise. As the undercurrents of the city shifted and new players emerged, the Ledger Ghost's legend only grew. His presence was a constant reminder that beneath the surface of every deal, every whispered negotiation, and every coded message, there was a force working relentlessly to maintain the fragile equilibrium. In the intricate dance between light and shadow, he was the silent conductor, orchestrating a symphony of secrets that no one else could hear but everyone felt. As the clock struck 3:12 p.m., the city's hum seemed to dim, swallowed by the invisible tension that gripped the air. In that fleeting moment, the Ledger Ghost was already deep within the heart of the clan's most guarded fortress. A digital labyrinth fortified by layers of encryption designed to be impenetrable, protected further by physical tokens that were supposed to be untouchable. But the system, like a well-rehearsed stage, responded smoothly to his touch. Every protocol, every firewall, every seemingly impenetrable barrier bowed before his intimate knowledge of the architecture. There was no chaos, no clamoring alarms, only the quiet, calculated rhythm of a master at work. With surgical precision, he initiated 37 microtransfers, each one a thread woven into a vast tapestry of deception, sprawling across 17 countries and countless financial jurisdictions. This was no reckless heist. It was a crafted illusion, a masterclass in evasion. Each transfer was cleverly disguised as a legitimate transaction, masked under the guise of typical Yakuza operations. Business as usual, nothing out of place. The money flowed seamlessly through tax havens known for their secrecy, slipping through the cracks of international scrutiny like smoke through a cracked window. What made this theft extraordinary wasn't just the massive sum extracted or the dizzying speed with which it was done. It was the invisibility cloak draped over every move. Fraud detection systems, designed to catch anomalies and irregularities, found nothing. The algorithms that scanned for suspicious behavior processed each transaction as routine, legitimate activity. No alerts were triggered, no red flags waved. The clan's financial sentries remained oblivious, even as their lifeblood drained away. As the final transfer hit the cold wallets and bearer accounts, digital vaults with no ties to any known identity, the money had already journeyed through over 400 layers of transactions. By the time the Yakuza realized what had happened, the trail was cold, obscured by a labyrinthine network designed to frustrate even the most relentless investigators. It wasn't just a theft. It was an extraction of surgical perfection, a ghost slipping through walls that were supposed to be impenetrable. But beneath the surface of this flawless operation lay an uncomfortable truth. No outsider could have pulled this off. The level of access, the deep understanding of the system's design, and the flawless execution pointed to one conclusion: the Ledger Ghost was not merely a thief. He was the architect of the fortress he had just dismantled. Every line of code, every security protocol bore his fingerprints. The system was his creation, and he had turned his own masterpiece against its creators. In the aftermath, the city's underworld reeled. The clan's elite convened in shadowed rooms, their faces masks of fury and disbelief. The breach was not just a financial blow. It was a psychological wound, a reminder that even the most fortified walls had cracks. The Ledger Ghost had not only stolen billions, he had stolen their sense of invulnerability. And in a world where power was measured by control, that loss was more devastating than any sum of money. Meanwhile, the digital trail left behind was more a puzzle than a clue. Investigators from multiple agencies scrambled to piece together the fragments, but every lead dissolved into obscurity. The transactions were too clean, the routes too convoluted. It was as if the money had been swallowed by the very shadows themselves, vanishing before anyone could lay a hand on it. Yet, amidst the chaos, a subtle pattern began to emerge, one that only a few with keen eyes noticed. The transfers, while appearing random, echoed a sequence reminiscent of ancient codes, a cipher buried within financial jargon. It was a whisper from the ghost himself, a signature only the initiated could decipher. This cryptic breadcrumb hinted at something deeper, a message woven into the theft that went beyond mere greed or rebellion. As the days passed, the city's pulse quickened with rumors and speculation. Was the Ledger Ghost a rogue agent seeking revenge? A disgruntled architect bent on dismantling his own creation? Or was there a grander design at play, a shadow war unfolding beneath the neon-lit streets, where every move was a calculated gambit in a game only the few understood. The tension in the air thickened, as the lines between ally and adversary blurred. Every whispered conversation, every furtive glance carried the weight of suspicion. The lights of the city became not just illumination but a spotlight on secrets too dangerous to reveal. In this intricate web, the Ledger Ghost was both hunter and hunted, a phantom whose next move would ripple through the delicate balance of power. And as the night deepened, so did the mysteries surrounding the man who stole $1 billion in 16 minutes. His story far from over, his true motives hidden beneath layers of code and silence, waiting to be unraveled. The once impenetrable fortress of the clan's headquarters transformed overnight into a battlefield of suspicion and fear. What had been a place of quiet strategy and whispered plans now echoed with sharp voices and slammed doors. The air thickened with tension, as if the very walls were closing in, trapping everyone inside a spiraling nightmare fueled by paranoia. Meetings meant to resolve the crisis dissolved into relentless interrogations, where every glance was heavy with accusation and every silence screamed betrayal. No one was spared from scrutiny. Accountants who had once balanced ledgers with steady hands were now questioned about discrepancies that defied logic. Lieutenants, those trusted enforcers of the clan's will, found themselves cornered, their past loyalties dissected under cold, calculating gazes. Couriers who had moved in shadows without question were forced to recount every step, every whispered exchange, under the threat of violence. The clan's bankers, the silent guardians of illicit fortunes, were dragged from their desks to stand trial against suspicion. But no matter who was pressed, beaten, or threatened, the trail always led to the same impossible truth. The thief was not an outsider, not a rival clan's assassin or a law enforcement mole. It was one of their own, and that realization shattered more than just trust. It fractured the very foundation of their power. As days bled into nights, the clan's internal order unraveled. Phones, once lifelines of secret communication, were incinerated in fits of rage to prevent any more leaks. Safe houses, places once considered sanctuaries, were stormed by armed men driven by desperation and fear. Old alliances, built over decades and hardened by blood, crumbled like brittle glass. The quiet nods and subtle signs of respect turned into cold stares and whispered threats. Every member knew the stakes, and the higher-ups made it brutally clear. The one who uncovered the Ledger Ghost first would have the chance to reclaim honor and restore the clan's shattered image, or perish trying. This deadly roulette of suspicion created an atmosphere thick with tension, where every shadow could conceal an enemy and every smile might mask a dagger. The city outside continued its relentless pulse, unaware of the violent storm brewing within the clan's walls. But inside, the war was raw and unforgiving. It was a game where the price of failure was final, and the cost of victory was stained with blood. The search extended beyond the usual suspects, now twisting into a hunt for ghosts within their own ranks, where loyalty was a fragile illusion and every step forward risked plunging deeper into chaos. In this labyrinth of fear, some began to question the very nature of the Ledger Ghost. Was this figure truly one person, or a myth conjured to distract them from darker truths? The uncertainty gnawed at the edges of their resolve, adding a psychological layer to the already suffocating tension. The clan's enforcers, hardened by years of survival, found themselves haunted not just by the missing ledger, but by the growing sense that they were walking blindfolded toward an abyss. The fear of betrayal was no longer theoretical. It was a palpable presence, suffocating and relentless. Meanwhile, whispers of retaliation began to ripple through the underworld, a dangerous echo of the clan's internal collapse. Rival gangs, sensing weakness, tightened their grip on the streets, emboldened by the chaos within. The city's neon glow, once a symbol of power and opulence, now flickered with the uncertain light of impending violence. The once clear lines between friend and foe blurred, and every move was shadowed by the possibility of a trap, a double cross, or a fatal misstep. Amid the storm, the Ledger's absence was not just a loss of money but a wound to the clan's identity. It was a challenge to their very existence, a crack in the armor that had protected their empire for decades. and as the hunt intensified, the ledger's ghostly presence lingered like a specter over every decision, every whispered plan, every desperate gamble. The city waited, breathless and watchful, as the players moved in silence, each step a calculated risk in a game where the stakes were more than just survival. They were the soul of the underworld itself. Right below, I'm on this journey too. The moment the data converged, the weight of the impossible became undeniable. Interpol's cybercrime division, armed with digital forensics and complex algorithms, had traced unusual financial transactions that defied conventional logic. Japanese biometric registries, usually airtight, showed gaps where records should have been. Banks, once bastions of identity verification, now reported anomalies so blatant that the only logical explanation was the absence of any legitimate identity. The suspect, if he could even be called that, was a phantom woven into the fabric of digital systems but absent from the very foundations of human existence. No fingerprints, no health records, no travel logs, no school history. It was as if he had slipped through the cracks of reality itself, a man without a past, a digital void that resisted every attempt to be cataloged or understood. Every database query returned the same chilling message: no identifiable subject. This absence was not just a technical glitch. It was a deliberate erasure, a crafted invisibility that defied the meticulous surveillance and record-keeping of modern society. The investigators, now a coalition of international agencies, faced a new kind of terror. The Yakuza hadn't simply employed a skilled accountant to manage their clandestine finances. They had something far more unsettling. They had a man who didn't legally exist. This realization rippled through the intelligence community like a shockwave, forcing analysts to reconsider what they thought they knew about identity, control, and the shadows where criminal networks thrive. In Tokyo, the atmosphere inside the command center thickened with tension. Screens flickered with streams of data from biometric scanners, CCTV footage, and intercepted communications. Analysts tapped into encrypted chatter, searching for any hint, any slip that could expose the ghost. But the more they dug, the more they encountered empty spaces, records scrubbed clean, aliases that dissolved into nothingness, financial trails that looped in on themselves without revealing an origin. The psychological toll was tangible. Agents who had spent years tracking criminals found themselves grappling with an enigma that transcended their usual parameters. The absence of identity was a puzzle that challenged their perceptions of reality and legality. They were no longer hunting a man. They were chasing a void, a constructed absence designed to evade every mechanism meant to enforce accountability. In the field, officers reported an eerie parallel. Surveillance footage that should have captured the suspect's movements was riddled with glitches and distortions. Witnesses described fleeting glimpses of a figure who seemed to fade into the urban night, disappearing before anyone could get a solid look. The city, with all its neon lights and ceaseless activity, seemed complicit in harboring this ghost, its labyrinthine streets and anonymous crowds providing perfect cover. Meanwhile, forensic accountants poring over the suspect's transactions uncovered layers of obfuscation that hinted at something beyond mere money laundering. The ledgers were riddled with coded entries, financial movements that resembled a language only a select few could decipher. These cryptic patterns suggested not just concealment but a form of communication, an underground code that connected disparate parts of a vast, unseen network. The intersection of technology and human psychology became the battleground. Investigators wrestled with the implications of a man who had harnessed the machinery of modern identity to erase himself completely. They had to question whether this was the work of a single individual or the product of a sophisticated collective effort. The lines between man and myth blurred as the hunt deepened, and the city's underworld seemed to pulse with anticipation, waiting for the inevitable reckoning. Every lead that seemed promising dissolved into a dead end, every breakthrough shadowed by new mysteries. The digital void expanded, swallowing clues and confounding those determined to bring light to the darkness. In this game of shadows, the absence of evidence was itself evidence, a testament to the suspect's mastery over invisibility and the intricate web of deception that shielded him. Right below, I'm on this journey too. The Ledger Ghost's true origin reframed everything. He was never the product of traditional criminal lineage or inherited street power. Instead, he emerged from a shadowy government initiative, one that operated far from the public eye, where secrecy was the currency and trust was forbidden. The program's architects sought individuals who could slip through the cracks of global financial systems, people whose identities were blank slates, unburdened by familial ties or personal history. They wanted ghosts, agents who could infiltrate, gather intelligence, and vanish without a trace. He fit the profile perfectly. An uncanny aptitude for numbers, a mind calibrated to detect patterns in chaos, and a psychological resilience that bordered on the unbreakable. But precision and detachment, while necessary, weren't enough. The program demanded something more elusive, a capacity to erase oneself entirely, to become simultaneously everywhere and nowhere within the labyrinth of illicit money flows. He was their crowning achievement, a phantom born not of flesh and blood but of data and silence. Yet somewhere along the way the lines blurred. The mission was to dismantle, to destroy the financial arteries that fed the underworld's heart. Instead, he saw opportunity. The systems he was trained to penetrate revealed vulnerabilities not just in the criminals but in the very architecture of control itself. The government's reach was limited, constrained by bureaucracy and competing interests. The underworld, on the other hand, thrived on chaos and ambiguity, territory where his skills could be honed not to dismantle, but to dominate. He transitioned from hunter to architect, weaving his own empire within the shadows. The financial empires he helped build were invisible to standard audits, ghostly ledgers that only he could read and manipulate. His mastery wasn't just in numbers but in the psychological warfare of disappearance, erasing others as easily as one might delete a digital footprint, leaving behind nothing but questions and empty spaces where people once were. His disappearance was the final act of this transformation. Unlike the ghosts he made vanish, this was no forced exit. It was a choice, to disappear from a world that sought to bind him with labels, agent, criminal, ghost, and to exist beyond the reach of any system, government, or underworld. His vanishing was both a declaration and a question mark, a cipher that refused to be solved. The investigation into his trail became a study in absence and misdirection. Each lead crumbled under scrutiny. Each supposed breakthrough revealed itself as an illusion crafted with precision. The city's underbelly held its breath, aware that the disappearance of someone so deeply embedded in its veins left a vacuum, a void ready to be filled, but unpredictable in its consequences. Psychological profiles built from fragmented data suggested a mind perpetually in motion, never settling, always calculating the next move. The tension wasn't just in the hunt, but in the realization that this was a game without clear rules, where the lines between predator and prey shifted unpredictably. The Ledger Ghost was more than a phantom. He was a force that redefined the very idea of visibility within a network designed to conceal itself. In the corridors of power and the dimly lit backrooms of illicit exchanges, his name was whispered not as a legend but as an enigma, part myth, part warning. The complexity of his existence challenged the frameworks of law enforcement and criminal enterprise alike. He was a living paradox, born of control yet embodying chaos, a ghost engineered for destruction who instead built, vanished, and left behind only questions. Right below, I'm on this journey too. The moment the heist was uncovered, time became both his enemy and his ally. No longer the shadow lurking at the edges, he emerged as a force of calculated erasure, moving with the cold precision of a predator cornered yet unbroken. The first hours were a blur of digital carnage. Biometric chains, those threads of identity woven deep into the fabric of modern governance, were severed one by one. Fingerprints, iris scans, voice recognition data, all systematically obliterated as if he were unraveling a tapestry from within. Health databases, repositories of personal history and vulnerability, were corrupted with surgical exactness, leaving behind corrupted records and ghost files that would confound any attempt to trace him. Even the most rigid registries of historical residency, those anchors that tether souls to place and time, were rewritten, warped until his existence was no longer more than a glitch in bureaucratic memory. As the hours stretched beyond the first half-day, the scope of his operation unfolded in layers deeper than anyone could have anticipated. Surveillance footage that might have caught a flicker of his presence was rerouted again, and then looped into a hall of mirrors, a labyrinthine web of false trails that led nowhere. Facial recognition systems, designed to trap the faintest hint of recognition, were fed with spoofed profiles, digital puppets bearing his likeness but trapped in synthetic roles. These illusions moved through system cues like phantoms, creating enough noise to drown out the signal. Every traceable thread was twisted into a knot of deception, a puzzle designed to mislead and exhaust those who dared pursue him. The final phase was a descent into oblivion. Crossing borders, he slipped through the cracks of identities forged long before this moment, each one a carefully crafted persona with its own history, its own set of forged credentials. Safe houses that once offered refuge were reduced to ashes, their ruins silent witnesses to his passage. Communication nodes, those vital arteries of connection, were systematically deleted, severing the lifelines that might have linked him to any remaining allies or enemies. The digital realm that had once been his playground was stripped clean of his presence. Every byte of data that could reveal his existence erased in a relentless purge. By the time 72 hours had passed, the systems that once held him within their grasp had no record, no proof of the man who had been. In government databases, he was classified as unverifiable, inexistent. To the Yakuza, he was a ghost marked for death, a dead man walking through the corridors of their influence. Yet within the confines of his own fractured identity, he was something else entirely, reborn, unbound, and beyond the reach of any hand that sought to claim him. The city around him carried on indifferent, unaware that its most elusive inhabitant had slipped through the cracks with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Yet beneath the surface of the urban sprawl, the ripples of his disappearance stirred currents of suspicion and unease. Surveillance operators found their feeds compromised, analysts wrestled with contradictory data, and the underworld murmured of a vanishing act that defied explanation. Somewhere in a network of shadows and forgotten alleys, he was already moving towards a new reality, one forged in silence and shadows, where the rules were rewritten and the past had been expunged. Right below, "I'm on this journey too." 3 years had passed since the last confirmed sighting of the Ledger Ghost, a figure that had slipped through the cracks of every investigation, leaving behind only fragmented whispers and cold trails. Yet, in the sprawling urban maze of Singapore, where neon lights blur the lines between day and night, a transit camera captured something that reignited the cold case with an uncanny intensity. The footage showed a man whose gait was deliberate, almost measured, his posture rigid but not stiff, and his build unmistakably matching the descriptions that had haunted countless reports. The Ledger Ghost, it seemed, was not a relic of the past but a shadow moving through the present. Security teams scrambled to extract the footage, but as if the city itself conspired to keep the secret, the file was erased from the system moments after access was attempted. No manual deletion, no trace of an external breach, just a silent, automatic override that left a digital void where the evidence had been. The security logs recorded a cryptic signature, void_confirmed, an inscription that felt less like a technical note and more like a deliberate message, a mark left by an unseen hand. Whoever had engineered this knew the system intimately, their presence ghostly within the layers of code and firewalls. The implications were clear yet unsettling. Someone was actively protecting the Ledger Ghost, or perhaps the figure himself possessed the means to erase his own existence from every database and camera lens. The sophistication of the override suggested a mastery over technology that paralleled the elusive nature of the man it concealed. It was no longer a simple matter of a man on the run. This was an enigma wrapped in layers of calculated obfuscation. The city around this event didn't pause. Pedestrians hurried past, unaware of the invisible battle playing out in the digital ether above their heads. The transit system, usually a banal backdrop to daily routines, had become a stage for a silent confrontation between surveillance and secrecy. The Ledger Ghost had always been an outlier in the intricate web of urban life, but now he had slipped into a position where even the most advanced systems bent to his will, or to the will of those who ensured he remained undetected. Within the corridors of intelligence agencies and cyber units, the incident sparked quiet alarm. Analysts debated the possibility of sophisticated internal sabotage, but no insiders were identified, no fingerprints found. The phenomenon defied conventional explanation, blurring the edges between human agency and something more intangible. Was this protection a sign of an underground network still loyal to him? Or was it a manifestation of the Ledger Ghost's own technological prowess, a ghost in the machine that refused to be caught? Meanwhile, the psychological landscape of the case shifted. The figure who had once been a phantom in shadows was now a ghost in the system itself, occupying a liminal space where physical presence and digital absence coexisted. The tension between what was seen and what was deliberately concealed grew taut, as if the city's own pulse quickened in response to this unseen force. The mystery deepened, feeding speculation and unease among those who watched from the edges of the investigation. The Ledger Ghost's survival was no longer just a theory whispered in back alleys or a rumor in encrypted chat rooms. It was a reality etched into the very architecture of the city's surveillance framework, a puzzle that challenged both the tools meant to expose and the instincts trained to uncover. In this dance of concealment and revelation, the stakes had evolved beyond pursuit. They had become a silent standoff between presence and absence, shadow and light. Right below, "I'm on this journey too." The city beneath the neon haze held its breath, as if aware that somewhere in its labyrinth of alleys and glass towers, the Ledger Ghost had slipped away once again. The web of digital footprints, meticulously crafted and just as meticulously erased, left nothing but shadows in its wake. Every byte of data chased by agencies and crime syndicates alike dissolved into dead ends or false leads, a testament to the Ghost's mastery over the invisible currents of information. The cold hum of servers and blinking routers was the only witness to his existence, or deliberate non-existence. Those who had tried to unravel the Ghost's true identity found themselves ensnared not only in encrypted mazes, but in a psychological game that transcended technology. The man had anticipated every move, every countermeasure, and had built layers of misdirection so intricate that even the sharpest minds faltered. His disappearance was not a simple vanishing act. It was an act of architectural precision, a reconstruction of self that rendered him a ghost in the purest sense. No static photograph, no recognizable pattern in spending, no digital echo remained. He was a cipher, a phantom encoded in the city's pulse. In the sterile rooms where analysts pored over lines of code and surveillance footage, frustration grew palpable. The air was thick with the kind of tension born from chasing something that refused to be caught. The Ledger Ghost had outmaneuvered Interpol's finest, slipped through governmental nets designed to trap the most dangerous criminals, and had left the Yakuza tangled in a web of uncertainty. His ability to navigate the shadows of cyberspace and urban sprawl blurred the lines between reality and illusion. To those who pursued him, he was both a ghost and a mirror, reflecting their own limitations. Rumors whispered through the underground networks, each more enigmatic than the last. Some claimed he had vanished abroad, adopting a new identity in a city where anonymity was currency. Others suggested he had embedded himself deep within a seemingly ordinary life, a ghost not just in data but in flesh and bone, blending seamlessly with crowds, his movements calculated and untraceable. The truth was likely more complex, layered beneath layers of fabricated personas and digital smokescreens. To find him, one would have to see beyond the superficial, to decode the human element hidden beneath the strings of ones and zeros. The psychological toll on those who hunted him was undeniable. They wrestled not only with the puzzle of his whereabouts, but with the unsettling idea that the ghost was always several steps ahead, watching through unseen eyes, anticipating and manipulating. The city's very infrastructure seemed complicit in his evasion, its cameras capturing faces but not narratives, its sensors detecting motion but not intent. In this cat-and-mouse game, the Ledger Ghost had assumed the role of both prey and predator, a figure whose very absence was a statement of dominance. Even the digital world, vast and seemingly omnipresent, had limits when confronted with such calculated disappearance. The Ghost had exploited these gaps, the blind spots in technology and human perception alike. His existence challenged the assumption that everything could be tracked, that every secret could be uncovered. He had become a living paradox, present yet absent, known yet unknowable. His story was not just that of a criminal but of an enigma woven into the urban fabric, a silent thread disrupting the order of surveillance and control. In this fractured reality, the ledger itself, the record of transactions, secrets, and betrayals, became a symbol of the ghost's elusive nature. It was a testament to the mutable boundaries between truth and deception, a ledger that held no fixed entries but shifting shadows. And while the world searched for tangible proof, the ghost remained a question mark, a blank space where certainty once resided. His choices had rewritten the rules of pursuit, forcing a reconsideration of what it meant to be truly invisible in an age defined by exposure. The city moved on, unaware or indifferent to the silent war waged beneath its surface. Yet, in the cracks of this sprawling metropolis, the Ledger Ghost's presence lingered like a cold draft, a reminder that mastery over one's own identity could become the ultimate weapon. His story was far from over. It was merely suspended in a balance between revelation and oblivion, a tension that pulsed beneath the veneer of everyday life, waiting to shift once more. Right below, "I'm on this journey too." If you've made it this far, it means you're really on this journey too, and that's something I genuinely appreciate. It's not just about sharing a story. It's about connecting through those moments that make us question, reflect, and maybe see the world a little differently. If the story of the Ledger Ghost and the shadows beneath the city resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. There's a quiet value in having a space where these ideas come to life, and I'm looking forward to bringing more of that to you. And hey, if you want to drop a comment below, something like, "I'm on this journey too," would let me know you stuck around until the end. It's always good to see who's truly tuned in, and it helps build this little community where the conversation can keep flowing naturally. If this video sparked something for you, a simple like would be a nice way to acknowledge that connection we've built throughout the story. It's not about the numbers. It's about the shared experience, and that small gesture feels like a nod between us, like saying, "I see you, and you see me." Before you go, there's a video right here that complements this story perfectly. It dives a little deeper into the forces that shape the city's hidden layers, and I think you'll find it a smooth next step on this path we're walking together. So, go ahead and click over. It's waiting, and I'll see you there.